Welcome to Luminescence Common Sense Spirituality, a show designed to share spiritual insights with you so that you can comprehend the universe and how it functions. You are about to experience raised consciousness. This is a place where spiritual principles are shared with the goal of assisting you to expand your understanding of both the seen and unseen worlds. Luminescence Common Sense Spirituality helps you to discern the timeless truths handed down from wise sages through the ages, from the airy-fairy nonsense that is being taught today. Now, here is your host, Lynn Wyeth.
Welcome to Luminescence, Common Sense Spirituality, the radio show that disseminates esoteric knowledge and common sense spirituality. I'm Lynn Wyeth, creator of Namology Science, the ability to know all about a person's personality and their soul's purpose simply from a person's name. Now, the beautiful music you just heard is part of the music Shine by Dee L'Amour, and you can hear more of her music by visiting her website, DLamour.com. It's DLEMOR.com. And as you know, we always end our radio show with her gorgeous song called Shine. Now, our topic today is nature spirits and how to work with them and support them. What kind of nature spirits are there? How do we recognize them or even see them? What is the best way to approach them? How can we be of assistance to these spirits? When would it behoove us to call upon them? How can we establish a cohesive relationship with them? And our special guest today is Pat Robertson Rice. Now, Pat Robertson Rice offers spiritual counseling services that allow individuals to obtain the missing piece of information needed to come to terms with any issue being faced, decide on a proper course of action, and finally move forward in life. Now, helping others move forward through the most difficult times in their lives is her spiritual commitment. Help is just a phone call away. She has written the book, Greatness Thrust Upon Us, and I heard about Pat in 2007 when I was living in China, and I had a session with her. And the first part of her reading was phenomenal, and then I started asking questions, and the answers to the questions were so hard to believe that I thought, okay, she's really great at this first part that she provided previous to my questions, but not so good at the questions. However, when I found that tape 9 months later when I was leaving China and listened to it again, every single answer that she had given me had come to pass. She was 100% accurate, which blew me away. Anyway, I looked her back up when I came back in the States, and we've become great friends. So I'm just delighted to welcome Pat onto Luminescence. So welcome back, Pat. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Sharon. And the topic today is one that is a very joyful one, and I thank you for letting us talk about it.
Oh, well, thank you. So, nature spirits, how do we work with them and how do we support them?
Well, first of all, we're going to have to talk about what they are. You know, Sharon, I was thinking this morning, I took a lot of science courses in high school and college, but nobody ever talked about the nature spirits, and, you know, nature is a very large topic. So basically, if you're talking about a nature spirit, when we come to Earth, we are given a guardian angel to be with us, to help us our entire lifetime. We fall out of the birth canal, that guardian angel is there to be with us. And the nature spirits are the guardian angels of nature. So that basically means that every tree has a guardian angel, has one of these little guardian spirits. Every shrub, every pool of water, all the crystals under the earth, all of the minerals, there are nature spirits to take care of every one of God's fabulous creations. And most of us enjoy going into nature, and there's such a sanctity and a beauty, well, as long as man hadn't been in there and bulldozed part of it, or destroyed it. And we think about the gorgeous waterfalls. Well, guess what? The reason they're gorgeous is all of these creatures are tending to them and taking care of them, but we never see them. So your first question was, how do we, communicate with them? How do we respond to them? Well, the thing of it is that these creatures are angels. They come out of the angelic kingdom. Okay, so when we say angel, we think, okay, these beautiful beings, we have pictures of them in the Bible, and people tell all these miraculous stories about angel rescues and healings and everything. But we never think of them being on the earth. But the nature spirits are angelic, but from the very beginning of time, they have always been down on the earth. They've never been, in heaven. This is where they've been for thousands of years, down here, taking care of nature and doing their job. So we want to think about the fact of how we may have seen some of these creatures, so we would know how to respond to them and how people responded to them. Well, thank God a man came along, a genius man by the name of Walt Disney. And Walt Disney, as we all know, was this fabulous movie maker. And I'm going to bet that every person listening to us today, and I'm sure this is true for Sharon and everybody else, if we said Peter Pan, the movie of Peter Pan, everybody in the world has seen it. It was even on Broadway for years. And the little precious creature in Peter Pan that all of us remember was Tinkerbell. Now, you remember her, don't you, Sharon? Can't you just see her, flying around? So she's a nature spirit, and we'll talk more about that. And then we all saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And we can all draw a picture of them. I mean, little short, squatty guys, all had different personalities, fell in love with the beautiful Snow White, and every day, hi-ho, it's off to work. And off they went. And where did they go? To the mines. They take care of things under the ground, like the minerals. And then, not too long ago, we all saw that beautiful story about Ariel, the Little Mermaid. And, of course, mermaids even look like humans if you just don't go below the knees, where they get their fins. And anybody knows about leprechauns. If you're from, that nature up there, then you know about the little leprechauns and the pot of gold, which, of course, would connect them to knowing about minerals and things under the earth. So thank God for Walt Disney. We all grew up seeing on the wide screen nature spirits. So we know what they do. Tinkerbell flew around and gave information, and the dwarfs went to... So we all sort of know what these nature spirits are. But the question is, could we use them, or is this just something that is connected to movies or something like that? But the truth of the matter is we can have something to do with them. And I'm going to tell you, and Sharon will know about this because it's an amazing story from the 70s, how nature spirits played a big part in producing some scientific data that the world had not seen before. Now, Sharon, you remember the story about the Fenhorn community, right?
Yes, absolutely. And growing all these fabulous plants.
Yeah. And so there were three key people, Eileen Caddy, her husband Peter, and her best friend Dorothy McLean. And now I will say straight off, they were very spiritual people. And they worked in the town of Fenhorn. It was a large city-like thing. And they had three kids, and they ran, managed a big hotel. And, anybody that's ever had their own business, that's 24/7. You never get away from it. So in her prayers one day, Eileen Caddy was told that they should get a little motorhome and travel down to the Fenhorn Bay and let their kids have a spring and summer down there and enjoy nature and just get out of the big city. And so her best friend, Dorothy McLean, said, well, I'll go too. So they go down to the bay. And, of course, all of us know what happens in the spring and summer. You plant your garden, and especially back then. This is in the 1960s. A lot more people had gardens than they have today. And so they, bless their hearts, they parked their trailers and decided to break ground, and it was nothing but a bunch of rocks and clay and old shale, and it was a mess. So Eileen Caddy was having some misgivings about her channeling there about coming down. And so she said, you all are going to have to help us now to plant this garden. It's kind of a mess. So Dorothy McLean was a person who was getting information from one of the nature spirit types called fairies. And Eileen Caddy was just asking for help, in her prayers. And so they decided that they would listen to the information coming from the fairies. And the three things came out of it that I will never forget. The first thing was you have to balance the soil. You have to balance the soil. So they called upon the nature spirits while they were digging out this 10 by 14 garden in rows, And so the second thing they learned was once they got the rocks out and they asked the nature spirits to come and they took a little, nitrogen and stuff and put it in the garden, they said, now you must plant your plants the way we tell you to. So Sharon and I would go out and have a garden, and we'd put in some, bean poles, and then we'd put in some squash and potatoes. But that's not the way they told them specifically. The fairies told them what crop to plant beside the other crop and which row to put them in. And then the third thing that I thought was very interesting, and I've tried it myself with flowers, they said dig one of the rows and put a little sign up that this is yours. And all of the slugs and the little creepy crawlers and the worms, they can have all those crops on that row but not bother yours. Now, who in the world would have ever thought about that? So they planted their garden with the help of the fairies. And in the spring, I can tell you that I was sitting in a movie theater in the 60s. They used to, Sharon, do you remember when the movies had the news on for the first 15 minutes before the feature came on?
Right, instead of the previews of other movies, they had news.
Right, they had the news around the world. And I saw this guy that they were talking about, Fenhorn, Scotland, and they had the movie cameras out there. And here was, I didn't know his name at the time, Peter Caddy, and he was holding a cabbage, and it was all the man could do to hold the cabbage into, his arms wouldn't even go around the cabbage. And then some lady was holding up turnips, and they were as big as the lady's head. And the squash, oh my Lord, they took 2 arms to hold. You have never seen such abundance in your life. And it was just so amazing, and people were talking about it. And then after this came on the screen, our country and many, many countries of Europe sent scientists over there to try to figure out how in the world could these 3 people produce a garden that had such produce of magnitude that the world has never seen anything like that. So it became, oh my God, I guess I would say an agricultural joy, for countries to go and figure out what did they do that these 3 little people, that they were just going to have a garden for stuff for themselves to eat. And of course, the truth of it was that the nature spirits helped them do all of this so that it produced this. But of course, that was God's way of getting the word out that if you work with angels, things always turn out well. Well, I'm happy to tell you that on YouTube, you can type in Fenhorn, Scotland Garden, and you will find 3 films, and you can see interviews with Eileen Caddy and her husband talking about how this all happened. And you can, if you ever go over there, you can visit this. They have a little thing called the original garden. You'll see this in the movies. And then they show you, oh, my God, this thing has grown. I mean, it's huge. And now there's a spiritual, intentional community there. So it's on my bucket list. I want to go and see that before I die. And then we had a lady in the United States that got inspired. Now, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, Sharon, Michelle Small Wright. And she has Paralandra in Virginia. And so she was inspired by that, and she was also a spiritual person. And she didn't want to grow vegetables. She wanted to grow flowers and herbs, and she wanted to be able to make essential oils and tinctures and ointments and things for healing. So you can find her online if you just type that in, Paralandra, and she's in Virginia, and you can see the things she sells, and you can order from her. And I can tell you that the essential oils I got from her were the most, oh, Lord, I guess I would say pure and wonderful oils. They were wonderful healing tools that you can order from her. So here we have two examples of how spiritual people who were brave enough, I guess, or whatever, smart enough, whatever you want to call it, to actually call on the nature spirits and work with them. And the bottom line, of course, is they're angels. And you can always call on angels, and they will come and help you. So have you ever
So I would say that they were in tune enough to call on angels because they felt them or sensed them within their own beings. And that brings us beautifully to our first break. And when we come back, we'll find out the best way to approach nature spirit. So I'm excited about that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Pat Robertson Rice is a magnificent spiritual counselor. She can help you to recognize your gifts and talents. How do you identify who you are created to be? Are you an artisan, an inventor, a manager, or something else? How do you identify your innate abilities when they are different from your family's, or from our educational system, or from the industries popular in your community? How do you identify talents that are hidden, yet completely innate and natural to you? Contact Pat Robertson Rice at spiritualbeginnings101.com for an illuminating journey about your life path.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Welcome back to Luminescence, Common Sense Spirituality. I'm Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and our special guest today is Pat Robertson Rice. And you can join Pat Robertson Rice or contact her through her website, spiritualbeginnings101.com. And I just want to say, for all of us non-great spellers out there, beginnings has 2 N's in the middle. So it's spiritualbeginnings101.com. So we're talking about nature spirits. And so we were talking about how we've seen them and wonderful Walt Disney that's made them very much apparent to everybody what nature spirits are. So what's the best way to approach them, Pat?
Well, I think you have to know the categories, because you wouldn't necessarily be working with all of them at the same time, okay? So let's say the most common thing that someone might be doing would be to plant a vegetable garden or either work in their backyard, okay? So I want to introduce something very interesting for people who are working with flowers or working with shrubs or what have you. The category for flowers just by itself of these nature spirit are called devas. And the devas are the most amazing things to me, because there's a deva for every type of flower. So that's why if you plant seeds for pansies, they're going to always come up as pansies. They won't come up as anything else, because that deva is the one that controls what pansies look like. And if you're, going to buy a rose bush and put it in the ground, then the deva that helps to take care of the rose bush is just the rose deva. I mean, what I'm saying, if there are 100 varieties of flowers, there are 100 different devas. And there's not just one, of course. Everybody that plants a rose gets their own deva. So the devas are, I don't know how anything could be this smart the way God planned it. But the deva has the blueprint. And then the nature spirits, the deva holds the blueprint of the flower, and the nature spirits do all the nourishment, help the seeds sprout out, or help the bulbs or what have you. And they hold the blueprint for every, there's a different deva for every flower, is what I'm trying to say. Now, that's amazing. Can you imagine how long that took God and the angels up there to create all of that they would have that kind of knowledge? But the nature spirits, once the deva holds that blueprint together, then they are the little worker bees, that keep the flowers growing. So if you're going to have a garden, or if you're going to have, just flowers, the first thing you would want to do is to call on the deva for the flowers, and then you would call on the deva for the corn and the deva for the potatoes, whatever it is you're putting in there. And, Sharon, a lot of people have plants around their house, and I think it's pretty well established now through a lot of scientific studies that plants can respond to external stimuli. Like if you played music that was discordant and horrible, your plant isn't going to be as pretty as it is if you played very nice classical music for it. There are lots of studies on that. And I think people talk about, lots of times that love flowers say, well, I talk to my plants when I'm watering them. Well, I think that's what you do when you go outside. So when you're ready to plant something, you call on the deva of the geranium or the deva of the daisy or whatever you're putting in the ground, and you ask the deva and the nature spirits to help you nourish your garden so that it will grow and be very pretty. And the other type of beings, that help are the ones called undines, and they are around water. So if you're lucky enough to have a pretty fountain that you have put in your garden, the undines would be the ones that you call on, and these are pretty much like the water spirits, and they are the ones that will help clean your water. Think about in nature, the streams and everything don't look polluted. They're beautiful, and that's because all of those little creatures are working with them. And then we have a fun group of guys, and they work the soil. Now, like I said, the Eileen Caddy and them found out that the first thing the nature spirits told them was you had to balance your soil. You had to have your soil perfect, or didn't matter what kind of things you were trying to plant, it wasn't going to grow because, as I said, they had lots of bad clay in that area and shale. And so the undines would help you keep things cleaned out around your water that might be flowing there. So the best little group of guys that work under the ground are called gnomes. Now, Sharon, last year, you could not have gone in a department store at Christmas and not seen something with a picture of a gnome or a shape of a gnome. The whole world exploded with fairy houses and gnomes last year. And little children, were buying little fairy houses to put out in the garden for the fairies to live in. And the gnomes had their pictures everywhere. And I bought a little gnome statue just because I thought it was cute. Well, one day I decided that I would try to thank the people that were helping me in my garden, because my flowers were very pretty and they bloomed, and had big full blossoms. And I thought, I asked them to help me, but I didn't reciprocate. I didn't do anything back. So I was reading along in this book on nature spirits, and the guy said, the nature spirits like several things that you can give them. They like nuts that don't have too tough a shell. They like chocolate as long as it is wrapped. They like dried fruits, and they like shiny objects. And I thought, oh, thank God, here's something I can do to say thank you for how my flowers have done since I asked them to help me. So I got 2 glass bowls, and I put those 4 things in the bowls. And I thought, now, I've got tons of squirrels. And I said, how am I going to know that the nature spirits got these gifts instead of the squirrels? So my garden is set out in a square, and I said, I know what. So I took that gnome statue that I had bought, and under one of my bushes, I put one of the glass things with the little offerings I was giving them, and the gnome statue, so they'd know it was theirs. And then I went on the left-hand side of my garden, and I put the glass bowl that had the little gifts in it just up under the bush. And I said, I'm going to see what happens, because I do have a lot of squirrels now, I'm telling you. So I thought, Lord, those squirrels will probably get that stuff. Well, I couldn't wait to get out of bed the next day, and I went flying down the stairs to look out there. The bowl on the right that had the gnome statue in front of it to let them know it was theirs was completely gone. There was nothing in it. And the one on the left that I had just put under the other bush was still completely full.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And I thought, well, that's just luck. Maybe the squirrel didn't get up yesterday or something. So I did it another time, and I switched. I didn't keep it on I put the gnome on the left side this time. And both times I tried that, the bowl was empty where the gnome statue was. But the one that did not have the gnome in front of it, there was still all of the little gifts that I had put. No, it had not been touched. Now, a day later, I think the squirrels found it because some of the stuff was gone. But I thought, wow, I know that was just something I read, in the book, thank God, that you could do that. Now, who in the world would have thought they would like chocolate? But every time I and I bought little silver bells because they say the chocolate has to be wrapped. And if you do the dried fruits, you have to wrap them. They don't want anything that's not, like the nut will have a shell on it. But that gave me a lot of pleasure to play out there with them, in the garden to see that evidently they are there. So there are different categories for what you're planning would help you. Now, if you were a prospector and you were going on to look for gold or silver, and people still do that in the mountains. They even have places you can go where you can mine, through a stream or something. But we have a group of people that are the gnomes, as I was talking about, the little guys that work under the ground. And the name of the gnomes, the ones you might recognize, would be that they are brownies. Now, that's not a term we use here in our area, but they also have leprechauns that go under the ground, and we also know from Snow White that we have a little thing called a dwarf, and then in some areas they call them pygmies. Well, the gnomes go for the garden, Sharon. I mean, because you've got to have the underground working. Everything has where the roots of the flowers go down. But they also would be good for somebody who was serious about on a vacation trying to mine a little bit, because you could call on the gnomes and ask them to help you get steered in the right direction. It would be fun to try that one day, to call on the gnomes if you're going to dig somewhere, and then and see what happens. And the next day, don't call on them and see if you still, if you find something. But I can guarantee you, as I've said before, gnomes are angels now. So if you call on an angel, they will come and help you. I can promise you that. Now, I don't know that you'll hit the mother lode, for gold, but it might help you at least find some nuggets or something like that. Now, we have another type of, as I mentioned before, if you have a fountain, if you're lucky enough to have a pretty fountain that flows, in your garden to make it beautiful, that particular one is called an undine. Now, I do want to mention that all of us know from history that sailors were very superstitious. And almost any story you see that involved people going out in one of those big sailing vessels, they would have a lady on the bow, right there on the front part of the boat. Right, on the front of the boat. Oh, yes, and they were very superstitious about she brought them luck, lady luck. So they would have the goddess that they worshipped or, whatever strapped on the front of the boat. Well, there were also a lot of tales from sailors about seeing mermaids and mermen and stuff like that. And most of us kind of said, well, I don't believe that. Well, the thing of it is, these nature spirits are kind of shy. And we have, you'll see online, if you go look at Fenhorn, only one picture that was ever taken where they captured the fairies around Dorothy McLean. And they were amazed that now we have a lot faster taking material in our cameras now. So, but I will say that I taught mythology when I was in high school teacher, and every story we ever read that involved the water, some sailor was always saying he had seen a mermaid. Well, they're angels. And they don't have the kind of skin that we have, nor do any of these creatures. They are etheric. So you might feel bad for them and say, oh, my God, they had a fire. I bet, that they're all destroyed. Or I bet, the water came up and saturated the land and flooded it. And, oh, those poor nature. None of the elements, earth, air, fire, or water, will ever hurt them, because they are made of an entirely different substance than our skin would be. And they have been here thousands of years, like the angels have, and they're going to always be here thousands of years. But that's why I guess people don't really see mermaids. They may see them under the water, but there certainly have been tales, from the nautical lore always about seeing a mermaid. But the truth of the matter is they are real. They go under the mermaid, under the undine category. So these water spirits that people have talked about, sometimes when you see the waves rolling in, it looks almost like there's a little figure laughing and playing in them, and that's true. They are the water spirits, and the nymphs is another word they use around rivers and streams. And so how you would respond to these would be whatever your need was. if you were a sailor and you wanted to have a good tide and you didn't want to have a storm or whatever, you would ask the undines to be with you and to help you guide your ship through waters that would not be rocky. So depending on what you're looking for, you would pull up the kind of nature spirit you needed. Now,
okay, so I have a quick question there.
Yeah.
With the undines, first of all, I want to know how to spell undine because it's a new word for me.
Undines. Undines.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to know, would there also be, since they help, the undines are helping the water and everything, would they help if you had turbulence in an airplane and you wanted the wind to die down a little bit or move out of the way so that the airplane wasn't being shook around? Could you call on the undines for that too, or would that be somebody else?
No, the sylphs. You've exactly gone to the next category I was going to talk about. So we'll stay here with airplanes. We're going to hear about the next category right after this next break. And again, if you would like a reading with Pat, let me just put it in here really quickly. Her website is Spiritual Beginnings 101. And so if you'd like a reading with her, they're fabulous. And I don't know how Pat does it at the prices that she does it at and how she survives. She's working all day long with so many people, and that's how she makes it work. But her readings are absolutely fabulous, and we will be right back with Pat after this next break.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Mark Twain said the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. The why is hidden in your name. Sharon Lynn Wyeth has created a scientific way of deciphering your name to reveal your contract for this lifetime, and your name even specifies the 7 areas that are subsets of your soul's overall goal. Your name identifies who you are to both yourself and others. What does your name say about you? Contact Sharon Lynn Wyeth at info@knowthename.com for your stunning name review.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. There is this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to Black and brown people. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. There's something better waiting for us, something that feels more like freedom. Truth can inspire change. Please learn more at eji.org.
Welcome back to Luminescence, Common Sense Spirituality. I'm your host, Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and our special guest today is Pat Robertson Rice, who can be reached through her website, spiritualbeginnings101.com. Now, we've been talking about nature spirits and the different varieties of nature spirits, and right before the break, we were asking about getting rid of the turbulence if you're in an airplane. So, Pat, take it away from there. Who are we calling on for this one?
Okay. So the little angels that are in the sky, okay, they are called sylphs, S-Y-L-P-H-S. And I can tell you in mythology, they always talked about the sylphs when they needed a storm to stop or what have you, and you know, back in the ancient days. So the sylphs are basically what we call air spirits, and they are in charge of the wind. So they, you know, they can still the wind, or they can enhance the wind, whatever. Now, I happen to live, and Sharon happens to live on the East Coast, and every year we live in dread for September to come around, only in the aspect that it introduces the hurricane season. And we have had tremendous devastation up and down the East Coast, and I'm, also around the Panhandle there, connected to Florida. And so the sylphs would be the people you would call on when you found out that there was a targeted area where the eye of the storm was going to come. And last year, I remember, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but there was a Category 5, and it was coming in right down around Jacksonville, Florida. And they were talking about these people needed to, get out of the town and board up their houses because it was going to be a Category 5. And at the same time, they, the people were saying, well, let's all just say our prayers and let's ask that we want to ask two things, that before it comes into land, it would be just even less than a Category 1, and that it would move so that it would go into an area where there were not homes. That was the last thing, and they, were saying, everybody say a prayer, and ask that this be done. Well, if I were going to, now I did say my prayer for those people, and miraculously the next morning, the thing was down to a Category 1, and it went over an area where there were no homes. So the sylphs are the nature spirits that you would want to just include in your prayer, because you ask God, of course, but then the sylphs would be the nature spirits that would be able to help you out in moving that to, over some so that it wouldn't come in at a certain place on land. So the same thing, Sharon, for your question would be about the turbulence, Just remember, I'm going to say for the third time, they are angels. And when you call on an angel, they will respond as well as they can. Okay? So that's an interesting category. And then the other one is, I don't know, this was strange to me, the other element on the earth. The earth has 4 elements man can't control: earth, air, fire, water. So we cannot control, the storms yet, and we cannot control the floods, and we cannot control earthquakes, and we can't control some of those horrible forest fires, that break out in the California area. But the one thing they did say is that the nature spirit that works with fires is the salamander. I have never been able to find the connection of the salamander to fire. But this guy was talking about, he was a Boy Scout leader, and he was right. He was saying in this book I was reading about each of these, types of nature spirits, and he said if you ever get caught out in the woods and you don't have any matches and you're trying to strike 2 rocks together, to produce a little spark so you can start a fire, he said the most important thing for you to do is to call on the salamanders. And he said there are always salamanders in the forest. And he said if you call on them, they are required to come. Now, I've never been out in the woods since I read that, or had to start a fire, so I'm not sure that I know how that would work. But I can tell you, if this is an angelic creature, it will try to help you. So, anyway, those are the 4 types of nature spirits that you have. And like Sharon said, well, how are we supposed to connect with them? It depends on what you need. That's how you connect with them. Now, we have a rule about if we just keep asking and asking for things, you have to give something in return, or if you're given something, then you have to respond. So I do want to stress that there is something we can do, because all of us have some type of nature around us. And when you walk outside in the spring and you see the early daffodils, what you need to do is thank them. You'd say, thank you, God. Thank you, nature spirits. Oh, my God, the earth just is blooming again. It's so beautiful. Thank you for all of your hard work to bring this rejuvenation to us. Now, how long did that take? A minute?
No, not even seconds.
I know. The nature spirits respond if you show appreciation. Now, how do I know that? Just from that little experiment I did about putting the stuff under there, under the bushes, for them. And I've done it many times after that, and it's always gone. But unfortunately, somebody took my gnome. I guess a squirrel got that, so I've got to get another one so they'll know which bowl is theirs. But you can show some appreciation. We bring our flowers inside, we cut them and bring them, and you can just talk about how beautiful nature is and thank God for the beauty and thank them for all of that and ask them for some guidance. Eileen Caddy and the girl, Dorothy McLean in Scotland, they listened. And they created something they called it a miracle. They listened. And something I forgot to tell you, Eileen Caddy was told when they said, oh, y'all take the kids and go down, you've worked so hard in the city, go out in nature. I forgot to tell you that God said, and something wonderful will happen. And it did. Scientists from all over the world. And you can go there and study, by the way, if I forgot to say that, yourself. You can go over there and study and take classes, and they'll show you, how they work with nature, that you could bring that back home. Now, what was that final question? I forgot, Sharon, what you wanted to
How we establish a cohesive relationship with them. I love this, Pat, especially because I live in a cabin in the middle of the woods, in my little forest, and every day I wake up and I tell the trees how beautiful they are.
Well, you've already done it. I think it's important, and most everyone listening to your show is probably spiritual or a seeker, let's put it that way. And I think it's important that we be reciprocal. So when you wake up or you're walking out, in your yard and you see the trees, angels are creatures of God. They understand what you're saying. And I don't know that they get your words as much as they get your feeling, your vibe, your energy. Okay? Now, so establishing a way of thanking these people, all of my friends that have plants say they thank them every time they water them. Say, oh, you're so pretty today, and I thank you for blooming. It's winter outside. It's important, but I love all these beautiful flowers you're still producing. So it's a vibe that you put off, a sincere energy that you send out to the nature spirits or the plants or to whomever you're speaking. So, Sharon, I think that's the key. I think if you are in the habit of being appreciative, and if you're in the habit of having a thankful heart, and you're in the habit of trying to raise the vibration on the planet with positive thoughts is what I'm talking about, I think that's how they know.
I just think they're so gorgeous, and I love being in the middle of the woods. Anyway, so Pat, what are you working on right now? What are your next classes that you're offering people?
Well, I'm going to say one thing, okay? I want your listeners to watch the next thing, the category that, that we haven't talked about. The next thing that's coming up for us to be saturated with movies, saturated with stories, saturated with advertising is going to be on unicorns and dragons. They will be the next type of nature spirit that will be illuminated to us. Now, you just watch that. The reason I say that is that what I'm working on right now, and what everyone in the world, I think by now, has read about, is that our Earth is going into ascension. And folks, we don't have any choice about it. If our Earth is going to a higher vibration, we live on it, so we don't have any choice but to raise our vibration. Now, we can go into this change kicking and screaming, or we can embrace it and try to work with it and read some of these things about how to raise your vibration. But the nature spirits that we will be able to work with when we get into the fifth dimension, which is what I'm studying now and teaching about, are the ones that are coming back that some people, who are already highly spiritual will be able to see, just like if we're lucky, we might catch a glimpse of a unicorn, or we might catch a glimpse of a deva out there flying around the flowers, will be the unicorns and the dragons. And they are very helpful. When I say dragon, the dragons are very helpful to man, not harmful. And so that's one thing that's being talked about, that as we raise our vibration, we're going to have the ability to work with these very highly dimensional nature spirits that we haven't worked with on our earth.
I think that is incredible, and as always, the time just flies by when you're on the show with me, Pat. I so appreciate you coming on. Again, if you would like to have a reading with Pat, you can contact her through her website, spiritualbeginnings101.com. Next week, Michael Horn is going to be joining us. Now, Michael Horn is the United States representative for Billy Myers, who has been contacted by the Plejarians ever since 1953 and has come out with some stunning predictions that so far 100% have come true, even though the timing sometimes is a little bit off. And he's going to be talking to us about how the Plejarians see and view God and some of our religious stories with a little bit of twist to them. So it's going to be a very controversial show. They don't see everything the same way that we've been taught to see things. And I invite you just to come listen and to consider what's going to be discussed next week. And as always, I so appreciate you joining us on Luminescence, Common Sense Spirituality. We always end with the song Shine, and this is Sharon Lynn Wyeth signing off.
Gazing in the mirror, an image of an angel smiling back at her. No wounds or imperfections, just beauty and its glow. Her laughter and her heart, a reflection of her soul. And I want to shine like the sun and smile to stop the rain. And I want to dance with the wind and believe in dreams again. Of life stroke the canvas of her, the light slightly dimmed, her reflection